Hi, Diana here with iZotope. In this video, I wanted to show you how to use saturation in a mix scenario to enhance, excite, and polish your tracks. Before we get into this video, here's a quick recap on saturation, and you can also read more about it in our blog. Saturation is a type of distortion that historically comes from overloading the physical components of analog gear. It introduces two new processes to the original signal, compression and harmonic enhancement, which are really pleasing to the ear. Today, we have a range of plugins and tools that recreate this phenomena, and we can use saturation in so many creative ways to enhance our tracks. In this video, I'm going to use iZotope's new adaptive saturation plugin, Plasma.
Things I've been swinging back and forth, or running in one thread, suspended to remain on course, almost hangs beneath my feet. Yeah, still going as I was told. When slow and steady, now the trail's gone cold. Wait, stay to the plan. Don't get discouraged, the way will shift again.
Plasma applies adaptive saturation, which you can fine-tune using attack and release settings, and I will show you everything that it does using these top 5 ways to use saturation. As with any effect, we want to use it in a way that best serves the track. So this will determine the right amount of saturation for your individual elements or the overall mix or master. When mixing, one of my favorite ways to use saturation is almost as a form of EQ to enhance and excite certain frequency ranges of my instruments and vocals to achieve the sonic quality that I'm looking for. The problem I find with that is most saturators will apply a static effect to the whole signal, giving me very little control over how it affects the frequency range of the instrument or vocal I'm working with. So let me introduce you to a new way to use saturation with iZotope's Plasma. So Plasma is a new intelligent tube saturator. So unlike other traditional saturators that will apply a static effect to the whole signal, Plasma will analyze and react to the input signal and apply saturation just where and when it's needed. So let's compare this in action by applying a static saturator.
Am I too late for love? Am I too late for love?
And now using Plasma on the same signal.
Am I too late for love? Am I too late for love?
Often, if I'm using saturation specifically to enhance the sonics of certain elements, I might be using multiband saturation, or I might be subtly blending different saturators together to help me achieve the sound that I'm looking for. But with Plasma, this gives me even more precise, balanced, and polished results. As we just discussed, saturation can really enhance the sonics of your original signal, and Plasma has a range of presets to choose from for different mixing and production scenarios. From the drop-down menu, I can choose an option based on my preferences, or I can start from scratch with a few really easy to use tools. The Flux Saturate dial allows me to dial in just the right amount of saturation, and the attack and release dials will determine how quickly the saturator reacts to the input signal and returns to default. And what I really love here is I can also dial in the frequency range to my liking. So if, for example, I only want to enhance and saturate the high mids, I can cut the frequency range down to just that area, and this gives me even more flexibility to enhance the instruments and vocals I'm working with. With the overdrive, I can take my saturation effect from something quite subtle to introducing more weight and more obvious distortion into the signal.
Am I too late for love? Am I too late for love? Am I too late for love? Am I too late for love?
Frequently when I'm mixing, I will have some sort of saturation on my instrument buses, whether that's an actual saturator plugin or an analog EQ that will also introduce some harmonic excitement. Plasma is the perfect solution for this because I can dial in just the right amount of saturation across the whole frequency range thanks to its dynamic processing. So let's add it to our drum bus and take a listen to how the drums really sing and come to life by using a saturator. Now we can also add this to some vocal harmony stacks and also a string ensemble. Personally, I really love how it ties everything together, especially if I'm using different drum samples from various packs or different string VSCs and blending them together, for example. Saturation can be a great way to add some harmonic excitement to your masters too, so it's not just reserved for mixing and production. One thing to keep in mind though, that in mastering, there's a lot less we can influence in terms of the overall vibe and sonic profile of the track. So a lot of the saturation in terms of tone and sonic choices would be done during the production and mixing stages. But still, a little bit of saturation can go a long way in a great sounding master. Plasma has a range of mastering presets to choose from, and again, we can isolate the frequency range to avoid oversaturating the highs, for example, or adding too much saturation to the low end where maybe it's not needed. This gives me a lot of flexibility for adding just very simple and subtle saturation moves for a big impact. Now, for those of you who are used to using the Ozone 11 modules, you will already be familiar with mid-side and transient sustain modes. This is also included in Plasma, so now let's say if I wanted to add some excitation to my wide panned elements, I can switch over to mid-side and just add saturation into the side signal.
Memories talk, memories walk, memories true, memories false, memories washed away. It's okay to let them hold you down. Memories know, memories show all of the scratches on your soul. It's the debris that weighs you down. Memories talk, memories walk, memories true, memories false, memories washed away. It's okay to let them hold you down. Memories know, memories show all of the scratches on your soul. It's the debris
If we switch over to transient sustain mode, here we can add saturation to just the transient or just the sustain information of our track. For example, you could excite and saturate the sustain element or the initial hit of the transients of your performance, and also isolate this to a specific frequency range.
I'm just blowing through the smoke, elevate your mind, trying to see where it can go. I don't leave my feet though, 10 toes down, gotta stay in beast mode. I don't get no sleep, bro, sleeping on me, see me in your dreams woke. Boy, you know the streets cold, it'll leave your heart froze, keep the heat close. I'm just blowing through the smoke, elevate your mind, trying to see where it can go. I don't leave my feet though, 10 toes down, gotta stay in beast mode. I don't get no sleep, bro, sleeping on me, see me in your dreams woke. Boy, you know the streets cold, it'll leave your heart froze, keep the heat close.
Last but by no means least, saturation can be used in sound design or to enhance your creative effects. For example, let's take a listen to this simple pad sound with added saturation, and let's turn up the overdrive. This is already altering the original sound and adding a different sonic quality. Another great way to use saturation is to add it onto your effects chains. For example, you can add it after your reverb, modulation, or delay, and take a listen to how that affects those time-based effects. We hope you enjoyed this quick video on saturation techniques. Remember, with saturation, always be mindful how that affects the rest of your mix and how it sounds in the context of your track. Although saturation adds a subtle harmonic enhancement, when driven it can lead to distortion, and that may be desirable or it might not, depending on your needs and what your overall vision for the track is. And while it can be a very exciting and powerful tool for adding more energy and sonic enhancement, too much of it can have the opposite effect, so always listen in context and trust your ears. You can click the links in the description box below to try out Plasma for yourself. Let me know what you think, and also what are some of your favorite ways to use saturation. Thank you so much for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe to iZotope YouTube for more mixing and production tips and tricks.